Hey nerds, Farmer Jesse here. Welcome to Growers Daily, your daily dose of ecological farming insight. It is Tuesday, June 23rd, 2026, and today we are designing the perfect farm, talking about when to get rid of a pest or disease-covered crop and what my living pathways have taught me about patience or just, general lessons or all of the above. So let's do it. All right, everyone, welcome to Till Tuesday, your weekly reminder that you can get living soil compost and potting mixes from the bona fide nerds over there at Till Soil. Check out Nathan on the Composter Podcast, Season 4, Episode 3, or head to tillsoil.com to learn more. I hope everyone is doing well this fine Tuesday. I'm feeling pretty good, ready for the harvest today, and thankful it's not dumping rain again this morning, though ask me in a month how I feel about it not raining. Yesterday, I got some more lettuce in the ground, seems like what I do almost every day, and cleared a bed of cilantro in exchange for some more carrot seed going in the ground. Always can use some more carrots. Got another string on the tomatoes as well, with another trellis still needing to go up. All the good post-solstice stuff I'm usually doing. After the solstice, I always feel this weird combination of relief that the season is slowly winding down and terror that the season is slowly winding down because of how much I love growing, of course, and frankly don't love the winters here. There's just a constant, overwhelming amount of work to do still, but I also enjoy the work. So a lot of dueling dichotomies in this business. That's for sure. What are you all up to? Let us know, or better yet, upload a 20-second farm video clip to Dropbox or Drive and share it with Farmer Mike at no-tillgrowers.com. Always super fun to see those. All right, so every once in a while, but especially in the summer when I'm starting to feel a little fatigued from the season, my mind drifts off to the perfect farm, what that would look like. And I don't know if this will be helpful to you, but maybe some of my experience will be enlightening to some extent, especially, of course, my perfect farmland is my perfect farm, not the perfect farm. The perfect farm will not look the same for me as it does for you. And frankly, the perfect farm for me now would probably not look like the perfect farm to 30-year-old me, or maybe even 35-year-old me. I wanted different things then before having kids, back problems, and another decade and a half of farming experience under my belt. But I do think my perfect farm now would have been something really helpful to know back then when I was starting out. Like if what we were building then was conducive to what I would ultimately want later. So maybe you can glean something from me musing on it, or maybe not. And you can tell us what you think your perfect farm would look like with a little experience under your belt. Now, what we were building then, back in the day when we first started, was not ultimately conducive to what I would want later on, but I couldn't have known that then, obviously. We were living off-grid when I was in my early 30s in a cabin in the woods, doing almost everything by hand, but we were pretty isolated, which it turns out is not really what I want. It's not really my thing. Some growers love isolation for sure, no harm in that, but I've learned isolation is not entirely for me, and ditto Hannah. I don't always want to be around people, of course, but I do like having a large community nearby. For soccer coaching, for decent meals out with friends and family, for potentially, collaborating on the farm, for nearby markets and so on. So when I think of my dream farm, I think location first. It's got to be near stuff and near community, and especially near a market, and not just for hangouts, but also potentially, farm collaborations, like I said, but more on that in a minute. I also think woods. The woods are something I miss about that time off grid, something I wish we had more of here. Like we've got woods, but they're just not super accessible, and they bump up right against our neighbor's house. So wandering around them, I don't know, it's a bit awkward. It's just not the same as large, expansive woods where I can forage mushrooms, cut firewood and wander aimlessly without looking ridiculous or potentially creepy. This should be higher on the list, but multiple water sources are a huge part of a perfect farm to me as well. A well, a pond, a creek, a city water. I like to have at least 2 of those 4 there. This farm vaguely checks that box with a well and city water, but the well's not really in use. So I'd also like to build a pond at some point here. However, staying on the practical side of things, accessibility to large trucks is really important as well, I've learned. Our current farm is vaguely that, definitely better than our last 2 farms. We can get 18-wheelers back here, even if they don't love it, but we couldn't on the last 2 farms. That's important for soil mix, compost, and equipment deliveries, though. If they can't get back there, they won't come, and you got to figure out all sorts of convoluted retrieval options for big orders. Flat land would be nice, and one thing that we just don't have here is enough for potentially another family or multiple families to come farm with us. Conversely, some community plots. We don't have room for really even our own farm, but it would be nice to have more that we could offer to other people. But yes, at least some flat, well-draining land would be nice. I mean, I don't mind a little slight slope, but just a little more flat land would be welcomed. Soil type doesn't really bother me too much as long as it drains. I can handle clay now. I think we understand each other pretty well, Clay and I, but I just need the soil to be able to release the water that we get here occasionally. I would also love to either have perfectly placed infrastructure, barn with water and electricity, or have the budget to build it. What I mean is oftentimes farm properties have their barns in locations that are not necessarily convenient for vegetable watching, packing, and storing, right? Like oftentimes they're built for livestock, which kind of require different things. Ideally, the gardens surround the barn. I mean, ideally, the gardens surround the house and the barn, but I'd settle for the gardens surrounding the barn. Growing up poor, I guess, makes me more willing to be realistic about these things, even in my farmland fantasies. To that point, the perfect farmland generally belongs to the wealthy or the farmers who have inherited it. In short, it's going to cost you. So in the off chance that you're looking for farmland, and remember, I don't think most people should start, farming by buying farmland, but anyway, if you are to that step in the process where you are starting to look at farmland, I think it starts with some non-negotiables and adjusting your expectations to recognize that unless you're a millionaire, you're probably not going to access your dream farmland. What are you willing to sacrifice? What are you absolutely not willing to sacrifice? And I can't make that call for you what those things are, but what I've learned is that location is critical, water is essential, having good neighbors is wildly important, and having that delivery access comes in really, really handy. Most everything else you can kind of work around. So yeah, anyway, what say you all? What is the perfect farmland in your mind? So much of that will depend on your goals. Like I'm a veggie farmer and pretty happy just being a veggie farmer with fruit trees. For you, it will depend on your personality. Like if you want people around or people as far away as humanly possible. But anyway, let us know. And otherwise, we're going to take a quick break. When we come back, when to go ixnay on the opcray BRB. I'll bet they didn't know I spoke Pig Latin. Today's episode is brought to you by Grown By. Grow smarter with Grown By, the farmer-owned cooperative. Grown By is the platform for online sales of everything, custom and traditional CSAs, halves of beef, flower bouquets, wholesale to restaurants, and now Grown By supports in-person sales too. Their new app, Grown By Register, you can supercharge your market and farm stand, finally bringing together your online and offline sales and customer data. Grown By is proud to make local food accessible by processing SNAP benefits online and in person right within the app. Grown By helps you put your best food forward. Schedule a demo at coop.grownby.com/no-till. That's coop.grownby.com/no-till. All right, back to the show. A quick and loving reminder that if you, the listener or viewer, are enjoying this podcast, getting even a small amount of value from it, consider supporting our work over at patreon.com/no-till-growers. I will try to get to questions from everywhere that questions come in, but I will always get to your Patreon questions. Now, today's Patreon question comes to us from Patreon member Red Wing Farm, who writes, quote, "Hey Jesse, I have a question about terminating a crop that's failing. Here in southern New Jersey, allium leaf miner is pretty bad and we are experiencing an especially bad year. Our leeks are already showing severe disease. I am considering terminating for another crop since yields will be very low. I'm wondering what your approach is when deciding to abandon a crop that's failing in order to get something else in that bed space. Thanks," end quote. Okay, so great question here, and a bummer about the leaf miner. And I recently took a question similar to this on cauliflower that had burned from a frost that I will link in the show notes. But there's always a lot to say about how to make these sort of decisions because it varies based on the crop, the time of year, the type of damage, pest, disease, or just poor transplanting execution or whatever. So what I think I'll do with this question today is address it from the standpoint of, instead of, say, spotty germination or crop getting hammered by frost, in this case, disease and or pests. The reason there's a big difference between these types of decisions is that if you just goof and don't prep your soil well, or forget to cover the plants for a frost or whatever, or plant on a really hot day, or forget to water, or you got some bad seed or anything, any of those sorts of issues, the effects are relatively short-lived and relatively benign, meaning the crop loss in those situations is not going to affect other crops down the line. A disease or pest issue, however, is more complicated because if you cannot contain or control the pest or disease, then you could actually be making it harder to grow those crops that are affected down the line, like next year, end of season, whatever. So to use your example here, you're dealing with leaf miners. What you don't want to do is propagate those leaf miners because allium leaf miners tend to overwinter in the soil and or in allium debris. So if you cannot control them through biological organic means in the moment, there are quite a few of these, different options for leaf miners, from neem oil to citrus traps, etc. But if you cannot control and contain them, then you may be making the problem worse for crops down the line. Now, if the bed is mostly mature and you are losing just a handful of crops, pull those crops that are affected and keep the rest, maybe even protecting them. But by and large, you don't want to just, have plants keep growing that have pests like that. I don't think there's a perfect rule of thumb here for this, but this is how I think of it. First, can I get that pest or disease under control? If so, then I start there, like the potato beetle example from earlier this season. I recognized there was a problem, treated it organically, and once it was under control, then I could let the crop continue growing without as much concern. Next year, I will rotate my potato crop away from that area and protect my potato crop from abiotic stresses like obnoxiously late frosts, or 3 that brought on these potato beetles, I would assume. So yes, observe the problem, treat the problem, get it under control, and if you cannot, then consider pulling the crop and breaking up the food source, in this case, alliums. And if it's really bad, maybe you don't grow alliums next year to completely break that cycle. The same thing might go for certain diseases, which can be tough. You might see some early blight on a handful of tomato plants, for instance. In my experience, it's better to pull those plants and move on than try to grow them until you get some more fruit, because they are liable to spread the disease as you harvest from that plant and then harvest from other plants. You're sort of transferring it on your fingertips, right? So some might go as far as pulling those with the disease and then spraying everything with copper. I don't, because I'm not a fan of broad spectrum fungicides like that. But the point being that if you don't get it under control, it will become a bigger problem than just, that one crop. The last thing I will say is that crop rotation and good soil management practices will take you really far in managing these diseases, but those in situ decisions are a big part of it as well. Like I said, there is no one easy rule of thumb. Every crop or disease or pest or whatever situation is going to be different. Just do your best to, slow the pest or disease down. And if that doesn't work, stop it from getting to the next part of the life cycle and do your best to take its food source away, which unfortunately sometimes is the crop you wanted to grow. Actually, the real last thing I'll say about this is to learn. Specifically, what is the pest's life cycle? What can you do to avoid it next year? Those facts can help a ton at avoiding this issue to begin with, because some of those pests have peak seasons, for instance, and if you can avoid those seasons, then you can avoid the worst effects, or some of them can be treated with just having like row cover over the crop as it grows. And of course, beneficials, soil health, but yeah, all those other things too. Anyway, how do you all make this call? Let us know. And otherwise, we're going to take one last quick break and then learn some hard lessons about some soft pathways. Yeah, be right back. All right, so living pathways have been a thing in my life for like 8 seasons now or so, and I've learned a thing or two over the course of that time. Just to back up real quick, because I can't assume everyone or maybe anyone has any idea what I'm talking about, it goes like this. One of the best things for the soil is to have living plants growing in it. We learned this from the late, great Dr. Elaine Ingham, for instance. Plants sequester carbon, gather microbes and nutrients, hold the soil in place, manage moisture, cool the soil, and so on. And because growing plants right up against my crops doesn't make a lot of sense for the kind of crops that we grow in our context, I've settled on living pathways as a way to have all the benefits of the growing plants in the soil without the drawbacks of competition, harvest complications, disease, etc., having those plants right up against, say, lettuce. Moreover, living pathways just stay put, which is nice. They don't wash out like wood chips or bare soil, and they don't have to be purchased and spread out like hay or straw. They just kind of grow themselves. Now, I want to emphasize that this is something that works for us, but may not make sense in every situation. In fact, it probably doesn't make sense in every situation. If I were in a dry climate, for instance, I would go with wood chips or straw all day because living pathways do require some water to maintain. We are relatively rich in water here, generally at least. I mean, multiple times a year, we are way too rich in it. So it works for us. However, I thought I would share some big lessons I've learned because I see more and more people trying the living pathways, and I want to make sure that you have all the best info that you can to proceed. First, it's hard to control what's in there without regular maintenance in those pathways. Like, you could do all the weeding up front and tarp and sow a range of different grasses and whatnot. But in our climate where the season is so long, grasses and weeds, the unwanted ones, are going to find their way through your living mulch. I'm not saying there aren't places where, say, Dutch white clover or micro clover or whatever won't be fine all season, but that place is, as far as I've found, not Kentucky Zone 6B. By midsummer, the clover dies back and the grasses come through. Then in winter, the chickweed and purple nettle make their stand. It's not impossible to manage those things. They just indeed require management. Another thing I've learned is shorter is better. For a while, I let the paths grow tall to maximize the underground soil growth and above ground benefits, but I learned quickly that that was also maximizing the weed potential. Short paths are less beneficial to the garden, fewer flowers and less bug habitat and less below ground soil health, but also not as harmful to production. Gotta find that balance. I've also learned that the paths don't just come and go as I need them to, and sometimes I do kind of need them to go. What I mean is that if I want to grow a vining crop at all in a living pathway area, I have to somehow get rid of or cover up that living pathway, or it becomes a total mess. Winter squash, for instance, if you grow those over living pathways, the grass or whatever's in the pathway will grow right up and through the vines and have time to go to seed. And not to mention cover up your winter squash, making it difficult to harvest. So that becomes a problem in the moment on those beds the next year because there is no easy way to get in there and weed them. And so all those weed seeds rain down and make things an issue. Chickweed and purple nettle, i.e. winter weeds, have caused me some fits, but largely just by my own doing. They are not inherently hard to manage in the pathways unless you allow them to grow tall and get out of control, which I did one year. So now the weed seeds they put down do cause me continual problems. I still do really enjoy our living pathways in the sections where I don't have them for whatever reason, usually like squash or sweet potato areas, but this year I have them also in like a tomato area and pepper area. In those areas, I kind of miss them. Those sections just feel a little bit empty to me, and I am still experimenting more and more with teff to see if it's a crop that makes sense, like a cover crop that makes sense to fill in those spaces where maybe I tarped and now I have a bare pathway, but want some, greenery there, at least for a short time, as YouTube viewers can see here with the teff between the other tomato beds that I have going this year. So anyway, that's where I'm at on living pathways. Like all things in gardening, they are imperfect, but I can't imagine not having them. It still feels like farming in a park here, and I do love me some parks. Anyway, what have your experiences been with living pathways? Let us know. Otherwise, we can put this Till Tuesday in the books. Don't forget, No-Till Growers is a nonprofit 501c3, so your donations are tax deductible and greatly appreciated. Please make sure to like and or subscribe and or follow wherever you're getting this podcast. That is an easy way to help us out as well. Enormous thank you to all of our show sponsors, and if you'd ever like to sponsor the show, you can reach out to Farmer Michelle at notillgrowers.com. Big thank you to Michelle. Big thank you to the No-Till Growers Board of Directors. Huge shouts to Willie Breeding for the theme music, Mike Hilbert for the production help and editing, and my wife Hannah for absolutely everything in the world. Also, shouts to Epidemic Sound for the background music that you can hear. Pick up a hat or a copy of my book, The Living Soil Handbook, at notillgrowers.com to support this work. Big thank you to everyone over at patreon.com/notillgrowers, where at a certain level, or if you just bump up from one level to another, you sign up in the month of June. It's almost over. We were almost done, June. Anyway, you get a shout on the show. No new signups yesterday, which is all good. We will get back to Gracie as soon as we can. But otherwise, you all have a great rest of your Tuesday. I will see you on Wednesday. It'll be great. Thanks for watching and or listening. Bye.
Introducing America's Workforce Academy, built by Meta. Paid training, a job, and a path to America's future. Because the future is for everyone. Learn more at meta.com/America's Workforce Academy.